America's destiny is in our sights. America's future is in our hands. And the best is yet to come.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Tumulty. I'm a columnist here at the Washington Post, and I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon here at Post Live for our discussion with Ken Blackwell. Ken is the former Secretary of State of Ohio. He is also one of President Trump's longest and staunchest supporters. He headed the domestic policy transition team for President-elect Trump and is now on the advisory boards of Black Voices for Trump and Pro-Life Voices for Trump. So welcome, Mr. Blackwell. Ken.
Good to be with you, Karen.
So we've had this convention, it's all building up for the main event tonight. The president's going to give his acceptance speech. What do you want to hear him say? What is it about Donald Trump that you want to hear him convey tonight that maybe you know, but other people don't about him?
Well, I think it's so important that the president come across as authentic. This is going to be a contrast election where the voters have a binary choice, not only between candidates, but between worldviews and aspirations of America's future. And I think what this president is going to say is, look, too many of our cities are becoming killing fields. And what we want to do is to advance a program that will make more of our cities fields of dreams, fields of opportunity, where we in fact have safe streets, safe neighborhoods where folks can raise their families. And I think what you're going to hear him say today is that, one, he understands that there is a real difference between a worldview that basically wants to redistribution wealth in America, as opposed to growing the pie and creating opportunities so that we can see, as Kennedy used to say, more rising tide lifting more boats into prosperity and comfortable living. That's what he's going to come across. His theme of America First is going to be laced throughout what he says today. But I think what he's going to wants to project is that he doesn't view as his opponent America as being irredeemably racist and flawed. That, as Lincoln said, the United States of America is not a perfect union, but a union that is perfectible by good men and good women doing great things together. So, I mean, that's thematically is what you're going to hear. I think what he wants to make sure he comes across is as authentic. That's going to be very, very important.
Well, you mentioned the cities. What do you think he needs to say about what Americans have seen going on for the last week in Kenosha, Wisconsin?
I think one of the things that he should pull on is what Martin Luther King basically said, that one, as we advance a brighter future for America and a more equitable distribution of opportunities to have the income and the safety needed to raise families, what he wants to do is to make sure that people understand that if in fact you have cities that are not adhering to the rule of law, but have fallen victim of lawlessness, what you will see is a spiraling down in the quality of life of those communities. And you will see people, what I used to call, as a former mayor, I was always interested not only in just making sure that our streets and our neighborhoods were safe, but that they were our city was an inviting atmosphere for investment, because capital seeks the path of least resistance and greatest opportunity. And I was always fond of saying, capital is a coward. It doesn't run to violence. It flees violence. And if in fact you want to turn these cities around and create the field of dreams, the cities of opportunity, you have to create environments that are conducive to capital investment. And that's what these mayors are starting to experience. They're seeing people who I call net taxpayers, people who pay more in taxes than they demand in service, fleeing their cities. And as a consequence, the people who are left in the cities, have lower incomes, have lower levels of education, and become trapped into what all too often, are plantations of dependency. That's the challenge. He has to be able to say that he's aware that his first responsibility to America is to make sure that we have a secure nation, and that he is providing the leadership and the cooperation with local and state officials to create safe neighborhoods and safe streets. And he's done that. He's extended the invitation.
And do you think that this is the kind of argument that is going to bring over suburban voters, and specifically suburban women, because the president is running a big deficit, especially with college educated women. Do you think this is going to be the argument that appeals to them?
Oh, absolutely. Because I don't care if you're conservative Republican or liberal Democrat, you want your family to be safe. You want your children to be safe. You want to live in an environment that's conducive to economic growth, job creation, where you can have an opportunity to work, where there's quality schools that can provide opportunities to learn for your children. That will appeal. And look, it's very very evident that more and more suburban livers, as is the case with urban dwellers, they're becoming frustrated with leadership that's derelict in its duty, turning away, caving in, cowering to this lawlessness. That's that. This is his opportunity to say, look, I respect classic United States constitutional federalism. I understand that the safety and the well-being of the citizens in their neighborhoods and in their cities first reside with mayors and township trustees and county commissioners. Uh, I am here to say that through my Operation Legend, we want to make sure that we have extended the opportunity for you to coalesce and with all levels of law enforcement and safety force officials to make sure that your neighborhoods are safe. People are hearing that. They are starting to frown on and reject these local officials who have cowered to lawlessness and who, for partisan reasons, are rejecting the invitation to coordinated effort, like that's being offered through Operation Legend.
Well, so right now, at least in our poll, Black voters are favoring Vice President Biden over President Trump by 87% to 9%, which is just about exactly the mark, I think, that just about that Hillary Clinton hit with them 4 years ago. You're talking in terms of an economic argument. Is that really going to be enough to bring over African Americans in significant numbers to President Trump?
Oh, absolutely. Look, the last time around, the president got 8% of the African American vote. This time, because I've been on the ground and I've crisscrossed the country, I've had the benefit of being not only a mayor of a major American city, but as one of Jack Kemp's undersecretaries when he was at HUD, and I crisscrossed the country with Jack and became very familiar with not only the leadership but the conditions that reside in a lot of the cities across this country. I think that with the opportunity zones, with this track record, with the president's track record has been with historically black colleges and universities, what he's done in criminal justice reform, he will take that 8% of 2016 and grow it, I predict, to 15 to 18% in this upcoming election. Uh, this president didn't just have a song and dance during an election year. He basically has had a sustained program of effort and accomplishments, in the 4 years that he's been in office. Uh, I think Newt Gingrich's advice to him in 2016 to develop a punch list of promises that he in fact could be held accountable to, when he went down and said, "Promise made, promise kept." And for Black Americans, and Black communities across this country, we have now started to see him go down that punch list. And again, whether it's with historically Black colleges and universities, where education uplift is and opportunity is so important, whether it's his support for a school choice, making sure that Black children are not held captives of dysfunctional schools, that there's a way out. His zeroing in on opportunity zones where you create the environment to make capital more attractive, which means that you have to have a safe environment, tax policies, regulatory policies that draw capital into those urban centers where it's needed. I think he will make that case. And Karen, look, let me go back and just put it in context. In 2004, George Bush received about 11% of the Black vote across the country. But in the state of Ohio, he got 18%. He got 18% because he spoke directly to issues that mattered to the Black community, and whether it was life or support for policies that protected and advanced the nuclear family, he in fact got a strong 18% of the Black vote, and that was decisive in Ohio, and in an election where Ohio mattered. If Ohio had gone the other way, George Bush wouldn't have been president.
Well,
And
Ken, Ken, I'd love to ask you about Ohio, because those of us who are political reporters have spent so much time in Ohio, because it for so many years was considered a bellwether. And it's maybe a little redder than it used to be, but it still has the best record of any state in the union for picking the winner in presidential elections. So what's it looking like to you on the ground there? Is this even within reach for Vice President Biden this year?
uh, look, I am one of those political operators that always runs scared. I never take anything for granted. You're absolutely right. The president won Ohio by 8 points, and his team hasn't left Ohio, and he works cooperatively with Governor DeWine, and all of the Republican officials in the state. So I think he has a solid foundation. But importantly, more importantly for me in these last 68 odd days, is that he has a team that is on the ground and ready to make a difference with his ground game. And going back to what we were just talking about, he can run on a record of promises made, promises kept, and accomplishments. And I think that in that case, not only will he carry Ohio, but Ohio will be one of the leading states in getting him closer to that 15%, of the Black vote, that I think he needs to carry, not only in Ohio but in Wisconsin with Milwaukee. He is in fact speaking, not just to Black voters, but coal miners in Pennsylvania, truck drivers. This guy is a blue collar billionaire. He knows how to
That
speak
blue
the
collar
language.
billionaire.
He knows how to speak. He knows how to speak the language. He's very much a part of the culture. And look, he's also very much a New Yorker. He's pugnacious, and he doesn't run away from a fight. He believes that if you think you're right, then you fight. And this president is a fighter, and Ohioans
Well,
like that.
Well, I'm going to write this down. You are predicting he's going to essentially double his percentage of African American votes. And if this prediction turns out to be right, I'm going to want to call you up after the election and have you explain precisely how he did this.
That's a fear.
Another big issue that people are talking about, and you're a former Secretary of State, so this is very much in your wheelhouse, is getting people to vote, getting people to the polls safely. A lot, there's a lot of concerns. I mean, poll workers tend to be retirees, the exact demographic that is most worried about COVID. Are people going to want to stand in line to vote, and especially if there are fewer polling places? What kind of concerns do you have about this election?
Let me just give some context to what I'm getting ready to say. I chair the International Foundation for Electoral Systems. It is funded primarily by USAID. We don't do elections in the United States, but it is a strictly bipartisan board, even number of Democrats and Republicans, and we work cooperatively together. In 2014, IFAS, as we call the International Foundation for Electoral Systems, we were working in Liberia, right in the middle of the Ebola pandemic. We established protocols, risk mitigation strategies, social distancing, and that country, that developing country, was able to pull off in-person voting right in the middle of the Ebola outbreak. There's no reason why we can't execute in-person voting in a very safe manner, taking advantage of early voting schedules, which will allow us to reduce the pressure on election day, but it's still in-person early voting strategies. Look, we also use individual voter demand mail voting. That is different from universal mail voting, where election officials just mail without request, mail ballots out to all registered voters, even against faulty or corrupt voter rolls, where you get a lot of ballots in play that fall outside of the chain of custody. When an individual wants to vote absentee and wants to do that by mail, they have to make the request. That request is followed through with a mail back to them, and there is a real transparency of the chain of custody, and that's so. Election officials across the country, they understand how we can do in-person voting and in-person voting safely, using again early voting schedules and absentee ballots, where there are those who can't come out to the polls either early or on election day. Having optimum numbers of eyeballs, transparency, and securing the ballot chain of custody is really important to giving people confidence in the results that are registered or tallied right after election day closes.
Well, do you think, though, that anybody who wants an absentee ballot should be able to get one? Do you think that the whole country ought to have no excuse absentee voting?
I think that anybody that has already established where they requested, not where election officials just mass voted, and that has been the established practice in that state. Look, there are 5 states that have put years of experience against all mail voting, and I think that they do it relatively safely, but it hasn't come in a matter of 5 weeks or 5 months. And so I think that where it is established law, and that's what's important here, Karen. We have election day, but we have 50 different election systems, and that has its positives and its negatives. That means that depending on your election officials, how engaged they are, how up to date they are in best practices and modern technology, will depend will give you an indication of how safe your ballot is, and how fraud proof or resistant the system happens to be. So the answer to your question is, where it's already established for mail voting, yes. Where absentee ballots are requested by a voter, yes. But if we want to have optimum confidence in the result in a timely fashion, we need to, in fact, encourage safe in-person voting, whether that be early or on election day. Look, that's the way at the precinct level, neighbors, know neighbors. There's a history, there's an eyeball recognition of folks who come in to vote. They talk about their kids going to school, or what's a good buy at the grocery store, or whose line needs to be cut. That's part of the American experience in balloting and voting. It is a civic engagement, civic responsibility. I happen to believe that it should be a holiday. Now, I've been saying that for years. That doesn't always get, because of the commercial hit that it might be, and a lot of people think we already have enough holidays. But if I had to do it, I would encourage people to give their workers a holiday, and it goes back to that allows me to go back to something you mentioned, and that is the mean age of the average election worker, whether it's volunteer or paid. Over half of those workers are over the age of 68. And so I think that we should be on a tear to entice, encourage younger folks to volunteer or to become paid poll workers and watchers.
Well, no matter how all of this gets sorted out, I mean, it's clear that we're going to have a lot more ballots this year cast by mail than we have ever had before. And you're right, every single state has different rules for how they handle it. They have different technology for how they handle it. And as a result, it takes a while to count the votes. I remember I was in Arizona election night 2018, and a lot of the people who were ahead on election night ended up not winning because of the mail-in votes that came in it took them over a week to get them all counted. The president has suggested that there's something sort of illegitimate about not knowing who the winner is on election night. What is your feeling about that?
Well, because of the whole process of overseas ballots, there are voters who cast provisional ballots where there's some question, and so provisional ballots, the whole certification process, we won't finally know for a few weeks as we get it sorted out. What I think the president is most concerned about, as I've heard him speak to this issue, is this notion of mailing every voter who is on the rolls a ballot. That is he is right to oppose that. I think it's going to be very important that we have volunteers who can help count the votes, who can be poll watchers. And my advice to the Republican National Committee and the Trump campaign. Win by a landslide, and that all goes away. Look, the reality is that there are those who are working to make sure that the results on election day are within what I call the margin of litigation, and they would rather for judges on the bench and lawyers to decide the outcome versus the voters. The one way that this all is reduced to a marginal concern is if in fact you win these states outside of the margin of litigation, and I think that can be done.
But you don't necessarily think that if we don't have a winner declared by midnight, election night, that people ought to start worrying
Well,
that there's some kind of fraud or something like
no,
that.
I really do believe that on election night, just as was the case, even in you will have a declared provisional, not provisional, but a preliminary vote total, with the acknowledgement that there are provisional ballots that need to be counted, there are overseas ballots that need to be counted. Um, that's going to be important. Look, I can go back and keep going back and forth on this. In terms of the mail voting, what we know now is that in Ohio, your mail-in ballot, whether it's absentee or what have you, has to have a postmark on it. In the final analysis, if you start doing this and you push the post office under its current practice, what if ballots come in that don't have the postmark stamp on it? Do you count them or you don't count them? This is the sort of confusion that the president is saying that we need to avoid. And if we do things in a reasonable fashion, we will have a nice balance between voter requested absentee ballots and states that have done this for years in their all mail-in balloting with the people who go out and safely vote in person. We can do this. We will get it done. Right now, we're doing a lot of head knocking around what is the definition of universal mail voting and whether or not it is laden with risk of fraud, and it is without question. Look,
Well, Ken,
here's a challenge. Here's a challenge that the Democrats are going to have. They're going after the youth vote very, very hard, and there are a lot of young people who have never put a stamp on an envelope. So
I think you're describing my kids there. Yeah, they've never written a check either. So
that's right.
well, I think we are just about out of time, Ken, but I so appreciate you being with us this afternoon and hope you'll be back soon. And like I said, I'm going to be watching election night to see if Trump hits that 15% with the African American vote.
All right, do that. I'll gladly be back with you.
Okie doke. Thank you very much for being with us. And that's all we have time for now, but we hope you will join us again today at 4 o'clock Eastern, where my colleague Frances Stead Sellers will be speaking with President Trump's counselor, Kellyanne Conway, on her last week on the job. She was the campaign manager in 2016, and she will be transitioning out. So that should be a fascinating discussion. And you can always check future events by going to WashingtonPostLive.com. See you next time.